Welcome to the Encore Audio Archives YouTube channel. I'm Taper Dave, and this is my channel. I've uploaded hundreds of talks here that I've recorded at meetings in West LA, and I've also recorded conventions starting in 2013. I've got a bunch of those up. And Walt and Mary Murray, the original owners of Encore Audio Archives, started the company in the 80s, and Walt recorded Joe and Charlie's and a bunch of stuff down in Vista, California. My sobriety date is June 20th of 1994. I hope you find something you like, so please like and subscribe to my channel and comment down below. If you want to hear something that I don't have or that you don't see, I'll see that I get it. Anyways, take care and have a great day if you want to.
I've refrained from taking a drink since May the 1st of 1999. And I have 6 great speakers up here, and they're going to talk a few minutes about what it was like and what it is like now. And our first speaker is Mr. Will.
Howdy, my name's Will, and I'm an alcoholic. I haven't had a drink since July the 22nd, 1972. I'm going to summarize my drunkalogue in 2 sentences. One, in 1965, I was stationed on a ship in Holy Loch, Scotland, and they removed me off of that ship and sent me on an aircraft carrier headed for Vietnam with an entry in my service record that said this man is psychologically, physically, and morally unfit to represent the United States government in a foreign country. And that startled me so much that I only drank for another 7 years. I'm here tonight because a man who really didn't know me very much kept inviting me to go to meetings. And he didn't tell me what kind of meetings they were. He just said, I think you'd enjoy and benefit from going to these meetings. And I said, what do you mean meetings? He said, oh, just folks that talk about life and stuff. And he kept inviting me to go. And I didn't want to go, because I didn't want to go anywhere where they didn't serve rum. So I kept resisting that. And one day he just told me, he said, Will, I think if you quit drinking, your life would get better. So I took that as a challenge, and so I went, I think, about 60 days without a drink. And then went up to him and said, you're a damn liar. He said, what do you mean? And I said, I ain't drank 60 days. My life's getting worse. He said, well, how many meetings have you been to? And I said, well, what meetings? What are you talking about? And he said, Alcoholics Anonymous meetings. And I said, why would I want to go to them? Didn't have a clue. But because of his insistence, I started going to meetings. And I started doing some other things. The Navy, once they found out that I was sober or not drinking, involved me in some educational and intervention kind of activities on the naval base at San Diego. And so I started learning. I started learning about me and about alcoholism and drinking and those kind of things. And one of the things that I find very valuable is that a lady who was involved in this kind of educational process there told me one day, she said, Will, one of your big problems is that you think you got to like everything that happens to you. And you really need to think about that a while. So I did. I got myself a little index card, and I wrote down on it, number 1, I don't like this, and put a blank there so that I could fit anything in there. Number 2, I don't have to like it, which was a great revelation to me, that I didn't have to like what happened to me. Number 3, it doesn't have to change just because I don't like it. Number 4, I don't have to drink or do anything else if it doesn't change. And number 5, the best thing I can change is me. About 10 years later, I added the 6th item to that list, which was the best time for me to change is now. Because I can't change yesterday and I can't change tomorrow. I can only do it today. And I needed that. I carried that card around in my pocket till the perspiration wiped the words off of it. But every time I went to the can, I would pull out that card and read it. Every time I get aggravated about something, I'd pull out that card and read it. And I was going to AA meetings, maybe 5, 6 meetings a week at the time. But I was just going. That's all I was doing. I was just attending AA and not really investing much of anything in myself. Well, I was also doing some stuff for the Navy in terms of alcohol education and intervention. And because of that, they, in their wisdom, decided to send me to Australia to a small little command out in the northwest Cape of Australia. Had about 300 sailors and Marines and 1,000 dependents. And my job was to start up an intervention program there, to start screening people and evaluating people. And
Pull the microphone up, please. There you go.
thank you, James. So off I go to Australia, and lo and behold, there was no AA in Australia where I was at. The nearest AA was 300 miles away. There was 3 sober guys. And then the next distance beyond that was 700 miles away in Perth, Australia, where they had real meetings. So there I was. I'd been using AA as a kind of a social outlet, and it was keeping me dry and sober. But I had no support, none whatsoever. And my job was to set up this program for identifying people with drinking problems and drug problems. And so you can imagine this was a total drinking environment on that base. Everything on that base except the chapel was focused on drinking. There was 3 clubs. There was Officers Club, a Chiefs Club, and Enlisted Man's Club. And all the social activities on that base centered around one of those 3 clubs. The Chiefs Club, where I went, was interesting. The bartender in the Chiefs Club was a cigar box. You went behind the bar, got what you wanted, and threw a quarter in the cigar box, and that was it. There was no accountability, nothing, for the amount that people drank there. And people thought I was there to count the amount of drinks that they took. So I was kind of on my own, and I was kind of stuck, I called this sin buster that I knew back in San Diego, and I said, there's no AA here. There's no support system here. There's no meetings to go to. And the first thing he said to me was, your God's too small. If you think God is sitting up there with checklists, counting how many meetings you go to, you're probably mistaken about that. And he said, you need to grow up and grow where you're planted. And I was thinking that as I read a lot of the literature, which is about all I had time to do over there, if I wasn't going to drink. And Bill Wilson had written, I think in 1958, he was writing to a guy who was thinking about doing one of those geographical escapes. And he said to him in this letter, are you really putting recovery first, or are you making that contingent upon people, places, and circumstances? And maybe you'd be better served if you just face the music where you are, use what you got of the AA program, and in his terms, win through. So that's what I needed to do. This chaplain told me, he said, you got the big book, you got the 12 and 12, you got other literature there. What you need to do is not concentrate on whether there's meetings for you to go to, but are you going to get the AA program inside of you? Because that's what you need. This isn't just a place you go to and a thing you do socially. It's a way of growth, and that's what you need to do. And so that's what I determined to do. I spent 2 years on that base with the big book, the 12 and 12, AA Way of Life, AA Comes of Age. I've run out of time. So, thank you.
Our next speaker is Mr. Charlie Scott.
I'm Charlie, alcoholic. All right. I wish we could just let Will speak. I always love to hear him talk some of his stories. And I've known Will for a good many years, and he's got a lot of them. My sobriety date is October the 1st, 1974. And I think all because of you guys and this program. And I was thinking as Helen was speaking, and I wish all of you, I hope all of you did hear Helen R's talk, because when she was a young girl here in Jackson and I was a young boy in Jackson, we had a similar upbringing, drunks at home. Probably didn't know it at the time. That's the interesting thing about it. When you're growing up and you live in a world, you don't know how many folks have got drunks at home. You know, you would have been kinder to people, I think. I know I would have been. But I said at that time I would never be like my father. You know, that's what I said as a young person, as I was dealing with chronic alcoholism. And I remember when I was 14, I had to take him fully in DTs on a 13-hour train ride, taking the Panama Limited City of New Orleans, Christmas Eve, to a treatment center in Illinois called the Keeley Institute, Kankakee, Illinois. That was where, in those days, this was like 1958, even though AA was around and he had been in and out of AA in Jackson, they would let people drink in this nice center, and then they would give them antabuse, and then they'd puke their guts out. The theory was, of course, that they wouldn't want to drink again after that, right? Well, they didn't really understand alcoholism, because that's what we do. But I wasn't going to be like that until I started drinking myself. Now, I remember my first drink when I was age 5 or 6. I was very sick, you know, with a cold or something. My mother gave me a glass of sherry wine, a little bitty jigger of sherry wine. And that was what they did back then. And I remember to this day how that felt going down. And I remember that warmth and that feeling of wonderful love with my mother at her breast and that wonderful alcohol. And then I continued that thought and that feeling for the rest of my life till alcohol killed me. Naturally, I didn't drink from the time I was 6 years old, but when I really started drinking in high school, junior high and high school, I reconnected with that feeling, and no matter what I did, no matter what the consequences were, I kept doing it. I kept doing it and kept doing it. And I drank with that conflict that on one hand, this is wonderful. On the other hand, it's terrible because I knew what it had done to my family. That's the ambivalence we get into, pure ambivalence. On one hand, it's life-saving. On the other hand, I can't do, it's horrible. And so I did come into AA eventually, having lost a lot of the things I'd gained in life. And alcohol had fully become my God. By the time I was age 30, everything I did was related to alcohol. And I had created a lot of havoc in a lot of people's lives. And when I came here, even though I knew about AA and I wasn't really fearful of it because I had been to meetings with him when I was 12 years old, I still held out that possibility that this wasn't me. Because how can you really, and I know some of you relate to this, you come in, I didn't know how to live sober. I knew how to live drunk. I knew how to live on alcohol. But the consequences were becoming too difficult to deal with. So I had to do something, I had to change. Flopped around for a couple of years and then finally did surrender to the fact that I was an alcoholic, that I was going to always be an alcoholic, and I better get with it. I was concerned in the early days that I had not had a spiritual experience, and I think that held me back a little bit, because when I heard about some of your experiences, when I heard about Bill W.'s experience or read about it, it was overwhelming. That had not happened. Therefore, I really wasn't making progress. And, you know, the further I studied and the more I talked and dealt with a sponsor and you people, I learned that what he believed, what Wilson wrote about, was that even though he in the beginning believed that you had to have that kind of instant experience, that conversion experience, he finally realized that all of us, most of us, were not going to have that. That spiritual experience was going to take a good time. It was going to take some time. And from that, as I understand it, the early writers, the early folks that got sober in AA, changed that spiritual experience as a prerequisite, as a requisite, to the spiritual awakening that we talk about, that they actually put in the 12th step. Because it's going to be, for most people, it's the same experience Wilson had, but over a longer period of time, a gradual period of time. For me, that was liberating. Two things were liberating. This was a disease. I was not responsible for it, but I had it and I was going to have it for the rest of my life. I'm going to die an alcoholic, Charlie. I'm going to die an alcoholic. The question is whether I'm going to be a sober or a drunk alcoholic. And I'm always going to be an alcoholic. Today I'm a sober alcoholic. I've recovered from that hopeless state, as we talk about. And the only thing I've got to do is continue with this program of recovery that you've so gracefully given me. The spiritual awakening we talk about that I learned was as a result of these steps, not one or two of them, not 4 or 5 of them, but all 12 of them. But the three pertinent ideas, steps 1, 2, or 3, for me was that spiritual beginning. That was a spiritual step. The beginning of this process to the spiritual awakening in the 12th step, which I've had. There's no question about it. I'm not the same person I was in 1974. I'm not the same person that I was in 84 and 94. And life has gone on since I've been in this program, as it has for all of us. I've had a lot of ups and downs, losses, gains. Like my friend Sonny talks about, he says, I've had wonderful joy. I've had great joy. I've also experienced that trudging, and in the last month or two I've had some of that trudging. But I know, and I know it through experience, that I don't have to drink over anything. I don't have to, I'm not going to. This is a wonderful way of life. If anybody's questioning and you're kind of on the fence, as Earl J. used to say, get with it, get with it. We have these outrageous promises, just outrageous, astonishing promises. In almost every one of the steps, there's a different promise. And after the 9th step, there are those outrageous promises that are really, we say, we don't think they are because they're happening among us. And they've happened for me. So I keep coming back, sober 38 years. It's just like it was at 5 years, 6 years. I do the same things I did then. I do them every day. If I keep coming, if I stay involved, as you teach me to do, I'm not going to drink again. And I'm going to have a degree of peace, and I'm going to die sober. Thanks.
Next speaker is Lulu P.
I brought notes. Now, how long do I have? 10. All right. I'm Lulu. I'm an alcoholic. Hey, everybody. I don't get asked to speak much, so in 10 minutes you may understand why. I don't know. I hope not. But and John, when John asked me to speak, he said, because you don't look like an old-timer. And I thought, well, I'm going to take that as a compliment, no matter how he meant it. But try not to focus too much on the drunk part. But, you know, You want people to know, I want people to know I'm an alcoholic and that I know what alcoholics feel and how we act and the things that we do. I was just reading a book by another addict, and he talked about the wonderful events in his life growing up. And that all he could think about, one of them was his baptism, and that all he could think about was, when the gown gets wet, are people going to be able to see through it? And I thought, you know, that just hit home to me. That was exactly my life. I know I had good events in my life growing up, but all I can remember is I'm too fat, I'm not smart enough, I'm not rich enough, I'm not enough. And that was my life. I'm never enough. I'll never fit in. I'm scared. You know, I was totally full of fear, no matter what it was. First grade, full of fear. So, you know, when you get all those things going, that's a good beginning for an alcoholic. That's a good thing to drink and try to quell those feelings, those thoughts. I came from a drunk father, a crazy mother who was mentally and physically, very physically abusive. And the dad was drunk and didn't do anything about it. She was so overpowering. And I said, I'll never be like her, but y'all know, people who know me know that I'm very overpowering and controlling and the whole 9 yards. But I gotta say that Tempered by Alcoholics Anonymous is something that at least I know about myself and can work on these things about myself and can listen when other people tell me, you know, Lulu, you're taking it a little too far, and I can pull back and rein it in. So, and one of the ways that I do that is I've had a sponsor ever since I got sober on, well, I was in treatment. I went to treatment on July the 8th, 1984. Thank you, thank you. Oh, I'm kind of like that guy last night. It's a Quentin Tarantino movie. I'm just going all over. But to establish the, you know, not to tell the stories, but I did start drinking alcoholically at the age of 12. The very first time I threw up, I blacked out, peed in my pants, I passed out. I got up, and I must have said something like, damn, that was fun, because I'm going to do it all over again. And from there on, blackouts were, I don't remember really getting drunk and not blacking out. I'm sure I did, but they were a common thing. And then when I would come to the next day, I would be overwhelmed with guilt and shame. And it was so much that only a drink would take care of that. And that the cycle just began. So at the age of 12, at the age of 14, I was sticking needles in my arms and thinking, you know, if I can't be good enough, I'm going to be the baddest of the bad. So I just thought that was, you know, that made me fit in somehow and made me cool. But, and that was back, you know, that's a long damn time ago. It's when Quaaludes were a quarter and an ounce of pot was $15. You know, that just, back in the 70s and 80s. I started getting arrested for public drunk at the age of 16, was my first one, which led to my family wanting to know what was wrong with me, and psychiatrists and psychologists and counselors and people who didn't know, and the loony bin arrested again, you know, and then the list goes on. So I lived like that from the age of 12 to the age of 24 for 12 years. And it was a constant. It wasn't 12 years old and I have to go to school. It was 12 years old and I got to have a drink. It was 15 years old and I got to have a drink. It was 22 years old and I got to have a drink. And I can't work. I'm unemployable. I can't do anything. All I can do is what I have to do to get alcohol. Alcohol, you know, the other stuff was a fun byproduct, but vodka was my lover for sure. So one time, the event that led to me going to treatment, I had been off for 5 days. I don't remember any of it. And another drunk that lived in the same apartment complex that I did called my grandfather and said, Lulu needs help. I always say, you know it's bad when the other drunks call and say, this drunk needs some help. I did go to treatment. I went to Baptist. They had an inpatient treatment at that time. And when they told me, Charlie said a couple of things that just were part of my story. Now I can't really remember what they were, but I remember nodding and going, yeah. When I found out that I was an alcoholic and that it was a disease and it could be cured, and I look at it as cured on a daily basis. It says recovered in the big book. It doesn't say recovering, it says recovered a lot of times. I'm recovered from this disease on a daily basis. I was really, really ecstatic that I knew to finally know what was wrong with me. How long's it been? And you know, it's been a great life ever since. And people who say, if anybody's in here that's 1 month sober, 2 months sober, my first year of sobriety was awesome. I had the best time. We played cards, we smoked cigarettes, we drank coffee, we went to work. I'll never forget, I got a job. It was an 8 to 5, Monday through Friday, minimum wage. I was like, yeah, I got a job. Yeah, I mean, it was just really all those things that made me happy. And my girlfriend says, you know, it's the little things in life. And getting up and going to work was not such a little thing for me. It was a big thing. It was, you said something about alcohol being the relief. It was the relief that I needed to live the life that I was living. The joy, the hard times in sobriety, struggles in sobriety, I wrote down relationships, God, and depression. And the good things in recovery, the joys in the recovery have been relationships, God, and depression. It's another one of those diseases that I've been diagnosed with, that there's something that can be done for it. And I'm thankful for the doctors and the people that we can talk to deal with life and things that come up. Just because I'm sober, I'm not immune to those type things. Relationships are still a problem for me. I've been married and divorced twice, and in sobriety, and you know, I've been seeing somebody for 8 months now, and I'm thinking that's a long time. You know, I'm doing good. 8 months. If it goes south right now, I've been in a long-term relationship, in my opinion. God has always been a struggle for me. It's been it's just something that I've struggled with, and I've had sponsors that have helped me with that so much. There are days, there are months sometimes when I don't feel, I'm scared to pray. I'm scared to pray sometimes. I'd still get those feelings of I'm not good enough. I'm not even good enough to pray. But like like the big book says, sometimes we go through that, and that's okay. And you just get back whenever you can and start praying again. And it has worked for me. It's worked for 28 years. I don't know what steps I'm working. I just know I live the life that I'm supposed to live, and with guidance from everybody. I know I'm an alcoholic. I've never, not once in 28 years, thought I'm not an alcoholic. Never. I've thought, yeah, I'd like to have a drink, but hadn't done it. I thought, yeah, I'd like to blow my brains out. Hadn't done it. So that just gives me the opportunity to be here today. And if, I hope that, I hope to help one person. I hope to help one person in all my sobriety. If I've helped just one, then it's made it worth it. But I hope that by continuing to stay sober and coming to meetings and showing up and doing things I don't want to do, like speaking, that I can help other people get sober, stay sober, do the deal. So I appreciate it. Thank you.
Next speaker is Tim A.
My name's Tim, and I'm an alcoholic. And I was thinking about one thing that you might want to take away from my speech today, and that I remember this old guy used to get up and speak, and he had these big orange suspenders on, and his name was Fred. And he used to get up, and he'd say, "Ain't it be good to say?" I can't even say. Told you I wasn't speaker. He said, "Ain't it good to be sober today?" And then he would yell it, and for a while there, I kind of wondered, is it really good to be sober today? But, and then I started thinking about it. Going to jail and waking up and puke and, going to a couple of meetings. Of course, my thinking was a little off at that point, but that was then. I'm real glad to be here today because I remember coming in and seeing Lulu and then later seeing Hall come in too. And I think about the days first getting sober, and unlike some people, like I went through like emotional roller coaster crazy. Every sickness I didn't get while I was drinking, I got, and then dealing with the police and God, the relationships with my parents and everything. It just seemed like was crashing down, and had to find a job. I hadn't held a job of any kind hardly before, and just all those things were just really crazy. And thank God that there was some people that were around that knew where I was at, that could give me some hope, that say, look, it's going to be okay. You just got to make it through this little bit of time here, and it's going to be better, And I just kept holding on to that hope, because I know bad things happen to good people, and then they come through it, and then they make it through the other side. And it's awesome to know that I can go through life today and face a lot of the things that I used to get drunk over and make it through it. And that is huge for me today. I wanted to go back and talk about real quick, just a quick drunk along. I grew up preacher's son, of all things. Crazy. Kids in those days were supposed to be seen, not heard. And I was pretty much like that way for a long time. And then I found alcohol, and it gave me the ability to be able to fit in, to be a part of, to have a place, to be able to be myself and be okay. And the time I was 13, I was drinking. By the time I was 16, I was shooting dope. And by the time I was 19, I was living in Arizona under a bush, So, I went through a lot of things, a lot of changes. And, I was in a car wreck with a guy that died, and I was, had numerous friends that couldn't face life without alcohol, and it couldn't know that there's going to be something better on the other side that ended up making the ultimate sacrifice. And I'm just grateful to God that, you know, and I questioned it at first. Why me, God? Why? Why do you give me this disease? Why do you make me not be able to drink and have fun and enjoy life, which I thought was enjoying life at the time. And after a while, it was like, thank you. Thank you for giving me. And went to treatment, and I'd never tried to stop drinking before. And while I was in treatment, I gave a lot of kernels of corn and English peas a run for the money on my fork, but I made it through and got through the other side. And you know, I never really tried to stop before. My mother came in and she was like, you know, I played the victim role because I was the baby of the family, and she always said, "Oh, I feel so horrible that you're in this terrible place." And the week before, I got to back up just a little bit. A week before, we went to a house about 2 doors down where the people that couldn't take care of themselves were coming out of Whitfield. And we walked in and they said, "Do you have all your drugs and medications with you?" And my mother looked at the guy like, "Are you crazy? I thought we were trying to get off of this." And he said, "Oh, you must be in the wrong place." And I said, "Yeah." I said, "Aren't we at the Harbor House?" And they said, "No, that's 2 doors down." So I went in the Harbor House, and I had a counselor there. His name was Skeets. I'll never forget him. And Clarence. And they played a huge, tremendous role in my sobriety. And Clarence and group one day looked over and said, "You know, y'all are going to be about 2-3 years sober. You're going to be riding in a Mercedes-Benz convertible with a pretty girl, and your life's going to be so unmanageable you're not even going to know what to do." Well, 2 years later, I was married to the girl. It was a black BMW, and my life was so crazy I didn't know which way to stand. And I dealt with that. And I too, of course, have been married twice in recovery. But I'm not good at relationships, but I keep trying because I know God's got somebody out there that'll put up with me. But okay, I'll make this quick then. I do want to say that since I've been sober, that I have found a different way of life. And like Lulu said, if I was, there was a girl that told me something when I first went to 4801. She said, "So you want to get sober now, don't you?" And she said, "Well, you better sit down and you better hold on to that seat because it's one hell of a ride. And if you think you're ready for it, you don't know what you got in store." And when she told me that, it scared me. But I didn't realize that it's such an awesome life, and it's scary, and it's crazy, and it's insane at times, but it's the best thing, and it's the most normal thing that I've ever felt, and that people really care. And if I had a problem today, I could call Hall and say, "Look, man, I got something going on." He's there, you know. It's no doubt about it. Because people have been through the same hell that I've been through, and they know where I've been because they live that too. And the cool thing about it is I've been sober since April the 13th, 1987, and I've had so many crazy things happen to me since I've been sober. Like I said, I've been divorced twice. I've lost both my parents. I've raised a son. I've seen people die in this program. I've seen people live in this program. I've started a business, and when they said help another alcoholic, so I hired a bunch of alcoholics to help me, you know. And so my sponsor said, "No, Tim, that's not God's will for your life. You need to take somebody through the steps so they can find some relief." And And the amazing part about it is that's the purpose. That's God's purpose for me today. And so here I am, and that's all I got. Thank you.
Mr. Hall R.
I'm Hall. I'm an alcoholic. It's good to be here. It's good to be sober. My sobriety date's 3/29 of 91. For that, I'm grateful. And it's a humbling thing to be standing up here tonight, today. I have a tremendous amount of respect for the people up here. I've been listening to them since the day I got sober. Tim 12-stepped me in a Taco Bell the first day I came back, so I've been around for a while. Just like some people talked about, I don't know if my story's much different than anyone else's. I drank alcoholically from the word go when I was a young kid. First time I drank and got drunk, I was playing drinking games and quarters and got sick and got in trouble, and that's how it started. Along the way, my dad was sober, and I had a brother who was in and out of this program, and they both tried to talk to me as a teenager. And my dad told me, he said, you drink alcoholically. And my brother had told me, he said, if you ever need some help, I'm here for you. And I just it was like Bill W.'s story. It was an ominous warning I failed to heed. I spent most of my teenage years and early college years, getting in trouble. I spent most of the 80s going out of treatment centers, jails, and hospitals. Wrecked cars, DUIs. I paid a lot of consequences along the way. There wasn't any area of my life that wasn't affected by my drinking. Legally, financially, family. Alcoholism hurts the people closest to you the most, and they had to endure me. At around, 19, 20 years old, I'd wrecked a truck and gotten in a fight with a police officer and just a whole host of charges, and I was in jail. And through all the trouble I'd been in, I never had that moment of clarity that maybe I should stop drinking. That never came. I was in jail, and a lawyer came to see me and said, "Here's your only shot. You can go to treatment, or you can stay in jail." And I said, "I'll stay in jail." And that's a bad decision. About a little more time in jail, I became a little more open to the idea of treatment. And so anyway, I was court ordered into a treatment center, danger to myself and others. And once again, I thought everybody was completely overreacting. My story was that I was a victim and I had some really bad luck. And if everybody would calm down, things would be okay. And anyway, I spent a long time in treatment, long enough to realize that if I didn't drink, I wouldn't get in trouble. And I got out of treatment with thinking I would stay sober. I could say I was an alcoholic. I could admit it. Didn't want to drink anymore. And so what I did was I went to the meetings. I was in the fellowship. But I either couldn't or wouldn't see your way of life. I wasn't willing to get a sponsor or work the steps. I figured I'd show up at the AA pep rally and, hey, it's great to be sober, and I wouldn't drink and things would be okay. But what I didn't know is the way I lived my life took me back to a drink. And it took a couple of more years before I came back to Alcoholics Anonymous. It was like flipping on a light switch. I wasn't real sure when I could flip it off. And reached the point of loneliness and despair and almost died from this disease a couple of times. And I went to the treatment center that I'd been in before, weighing about 50 pounds less than I weigh now. And just asked the doctor, what do I need to do? And and he looked at me and asked me if I still had a big book, and I told him I did. And he said, what I want you to do is I want you to go to the Northeast group tonight, and I want you to tell them that you can't stop drinking and you have no idea what to do. And I did that. And I don't know what anybody said in the meeting. I just know at the end of the meeting, a guy got up and he walked across the room and he said, I'm your sponsor. Here's what we're going to do. And for the first time in my life, I was teachable. And he not only got me involved in the fellowship after detox, he got me involved in the fellowship meetings all the time, but he got me involved in the program of Alcoholics Anonymous. And he took me on 12-step calls and had me doing things I had no idea why I was doing it. He kept telling me, I'm going to pick you up, and we're going to go somewhere. And he'd pick me up and take me to go pick up a wet drunk somewhere. And, you know, if you'd asked me in early sobriety, how do you stay sober? I said, you just get in the truck. That's what my sponsor keeps telling me to do. You just get in the truck. He didn't want to tell me where we're going. Just get in. And but at any rate, he took me through the steps and mainly doing the work, but I was willing to take the steps in my life. I knew I was powerless. My life was unmanageable. I'd grown up in the church and believed in God, but I don't know about any of you guys, but I thought I'd gone a little too far off track to be seeking God. You know, you feel like you've gone so far you can't get back, and that's where I was. And my sponsor just asked me, he said, are you willing to believe in a power greater than yourself? Are you willing to believe I'm telling you the truth? And when I nodded my head yes, he had me start praying and asking God to help me. And I didn't think it was going to work. But, you know, the first 3 steps for me were about getting right with God enough to realize that I couldn't stay sober on my own and I couldn't run my life on my own. And the 3rd step talks about a requirement, that we be convinced that a life run on self-will can hardly be a success. It took me a period of time in AA to figure that out. And, you know, as he took me through the process of the steps, it's all hindsight. I never understood a step while I was working it. But steps 4 through 7 were about getting right with myself. Steps 8 and 9 were about getting right with others. You know, and once I'd done that work, he just told me that the only way he knew to grow spiritually was to continue to take my inventory, to seek God, and to work with other alcoholics no matter what happens. And, you know, it's been an amazing life. This recovery, AA has given me a life I never really thought was possible. And probably the most important thing that it's given me is that I can sit there and I'm okay. You know, that sense of peace. Because coming into Alcoholics Anonymous, I could never really be here with you. I was either resentful about the past or afraid of the future. I could never really be here, but today I'm right here with you. And Alcoholics Anonymous not only saved my life and given me a life, but it's a design for living that works no matter what happens. Whether things are good, bad, or ugly, this works, you know. And so, you know, if you're sitting around wondering if this thing is worth it, which I spend a lot of days wondering that, I can tell you that it is. If you jump in with this thing both feet first, you can find a new way of life. And it's if you make a list of what you want out of life, you'll sell yourself short. And it's been an amazing ride, and I thank y'all for having me come up and speak for about 10 minutes. Normally I'll try to speak this long in a meeting, and they'll just cut me off, tell me to shut up. But it's good to be here. Thank you.
Next speaker is Gay A.
Hey everybody, my name is Gay and I'm a recovering alcoholic and addict. My sobriety date is October 27th, 2003. My first rehab goes back though to 1993, where I was able to enjoy about 3 years of sobriety before relapsing. But I've been in and out of the program. I've been through actually 6 rehab programs. But by the grace of God, this time I've got 9 years. I'm a little bit nervous, y'all. I made some notes, so y'all just bear with me as I was sitting here and listening to everybody and looking out. What came to my mind is, you guys are my family. And so there's no need for me to have no fear or be real nervous in front of my family. So anyway, my first experience with alcohol, I was probably about 4 years old. I remember my mom drank strawberry wine, and she happened to have it out. My sister, she was letting me taste a little bit, and I wanted to taste too, so she gave me a taste. You know, and I remember that I came along this guy, and he wanted us to go riding with him, and he happened to have a bottle of McCarty 151. I'd never really had hard liquor. So we get in there, and, you know, because of peer pressure, and I wanted to go along with, you know, my best friend, I turned up the bottle. And that night I became so intoxicated till I almost died of ODing on alcohol. I literally puked blood, and they had to walk me because I had lost all motions of my limbs. We went back to the same arcade. We left there to go to a beer store that they knew would sell beer to minors. And that night was my first experience with being arrested. We were hauled off to jail. Here I am, 12 years old, and they called my mom to come get us because my cousin's dad, you know, my mom knew that he would probably beat her niece, my cousin, if he knew about it. But that began, you know, some terrible things also happened. You know, as a child, I suffered some abuse, you know, in the family, sexual abuse, and then, you know, had some other very traumatic things happen in my life, but led me from that point on where I turned to alcohol and drugs because I knew it would numb out the pain. And I had so much hurt, and I felt so worthless, and I felt like that I was not good enough. Nobody wanted me. I was just trash. And I lived in fear because I did not want my mother to know what was going on in the secret life that I lived. I would save my lunch money to buy cigarettes, and every weekend we left for Friday night to go out with the, you know, the gang and go buy beer and play quarters just like, you know, other teenagers and stuff. But at about age 14, 15, I met my kid's father, and we were all partiers, and I got pregnant. So we got married, and at age 16, I was just turned 16, 2 weeks when we got married. We were both alcoholics and addicts, and you know, I grew up in the church, but I didn't know to turn to God during this time to pray and ask for his help. But we were both so miserable, and, you know, we lived the life of dealing drugs and doing drugs and partying, and our house was the party pad, and, you know, off and on through those years, the cops were called and da-da-da-da-da, but, you know, and all of that, I began to have so much, I was so sick from the addiction and, you know, not knowing how to live, and I blamed him for everything. You know, it was all his fault because he wouldn't do right. He made me do the drugs, you know, but it wasn't, you know, it was my fault too. And I had to learn to take responsibility for my actions. I reached a point, off and on through those teenage years, I could stop for periods of time, but then somewhere along the lines, because it was like I had so much anger and unforgiveness, and you know, I judged him that, you know, it's like somewhere along the lines I crossed a line that I couldn't go back. I crossed that line into the insanity and to not being able to stop for no period of time, you know, where I was doing the very thing I didn't want to do. By this time I had 3 children. I always wanted to be a good mom. I tried to stay in school, work, you know. By the time I was in my senior year of school, I was pregnant with my 3rd child. I was too embarrassed to go back to school for the 2nd semester, so I dropped out. By the time I was 21, I was pregnant with my 3rd daughter and or 3rd child. And it's something that's basically, after I had her is when that line, I really crossed the line. It was like the straw that broke the camel's back. Something happened within me, you know, and I just began on a downward spiral. At that time, I got a divorce. I had so much anger and hatred in my heart. That's a terrible feeling to have that in your heart. But I really got involved with some people where I began using IV drugs, really, really bad. But I would leave my kids for weeks at times, sometimes to go off on binges. And this time my family intervened, and they put me in rehab. And that's where I stayed sober for about 3 years. During that time, you know, when I first got there, it was at the Baptist Children's Village. I wanted to leave that day. You know, I had my little bags packed, and I took off walking, and they said, no, you know, if you leave, you're going to lose custody of your children, you're going to go to jail. Here's you a little black 24-hour book. Go sit outside and do a devotion. So I went out back and sat on the porch, and I remember reading that devotion, and I looked out at all the trees and stuff, and I just said this simple prayer. I said, God, I said, if you are real, I'll do the best I can here, but I want to be home by Christmas. I was bargaining with God. Y'all, I forgot all about praying that prayer, and I got busy doing the best I could. And Christmas Eve, they called me and told me to pack my bags and leave. I was going home. It was my time to go. I really wanted sobriety at this point. I said, you know, they said the statistics of who would stay sober and who wouldn't, and I was like, I'm going to be one that will. I want to stay sober. It felt so good to complete that program because I felt like this is the first thing I've ever completed in my life. I stayed out of a relationship for a year, but after a year, I got in a relationship. But I still didn't really know how to live. You know, I didn't know how to cope with all these emotions and feelings in life. You know, my husband now, tells me, you know, he says it all the time. He said alcohol and drugs was 15% of the problem. The other 85% is we didn't know how to live. And that was so true for me. I didn't know how to live. I had not really had the map, you know, to life given to me to tell me how to live. Anyway, so I relapsed. I ended up in a divorce and I relapsed. And, you know, they say the second when you relapse it's worse. Well, it was for me. And this relapse led me, during that time, my health deteriorated. I ended up in a mental institution for depression. I ended up in and out of those several times. I ended up ODing one night where my children were there in an apartment. I wanted to do just the ultimate shot of cocaine, and that night I died. And my friend, I believe the grace of God was there upon me, and I believe my friend and family members and stuff that they prayed me back. But God did not let me die in His great mercy. And then in my cry out to help, I would be on my way, you know, to do drugs and alcohol, and I cried out to God, and I said, God, please help me. I cannot stop doing this on my own. I tried, and, you know, people say God didn't put me where I'm in prison, but I believe in God's great mercy, He allowed me to go to prison where I sat for 9 years, 9 years mandatory under an armed robbery charge. Right before going, I talked to a counselor at St. Dominic's, and he said, you need to do at least 7 years. And I thought, you are crazy. I did not like him no more after that because I was believing God for a miracle that I wasn't going to have to do very long. But he said an alcoholic and addict of my type, because I had used for so long, I needed to sit still for a while so that I could get to know God and just dry out. My first six months to a year there, you know, I still did not know how to function without drugs and alcohol. But everything I learned in AA was coming back to me, and it was like God saying, put it into practice now. You know, you've got to learn how to live sober here, or you won't go back out. You'll go back out there, and you won't stay sober. And y'all, for me, what I experienced in my drug addiction and alcoholism was living hell. And I didn't like in my heart that I had another going back out. I sure didn't want to go back. That was another type of hell here on earth. The guilt and shame was so bad, and I asked God, I was like, how can I tell my family I'm sorry? And He's like, you just give your life to me and let me make something of it. You know, you just surrender. And I remember going to the altar there, and I just said, okay, I give up, I surrender. And He walked me through that. He He walked me through it, and He gave me the grace to do it, and I give Him all glory, honor, and praise to my Father God, to my Lord Jesus, and to the Holy Spirit, because I believe it's the power of God that keeps me sober today, and I'm just so grateful to be here, and God bless y'all, and my time's up too, so that's it.
I think we got a great talk going on here. Thanks for watching the channel. Taper Dave here. Just curious, do you think this is better than Zoom? Okay, this is how I prepare my drone for launching. I like to do it inside the cab of my truck so I'm not standing outside in the weather. To install the joysticks for control, up and down, right and left, powered on. I have an Android phone that I use to connect it to the drone with. And it's actually controlled through the iPhone, through an app. Oops, wrong way. It's actually controlled through the iPhone, or through this Android phone, through the app. It's actually controlled through the Android phone, through an app, and you connect it through this short connection right here.
Remote control connected.
Remote control's connected. So I pull out the drone. I have to extend the legs. Long legs extended first, then the short legs. Remove the gimbal protector. Set that aside, then power it on one short burst, then one long burst. I lay it down. So I have to go to calibrate. So the drone's not connected yet. It shows you here as this drone gets disconnected, even though the remote's powered on. So the drone has to establish it's connected. So I go into the app to calibration mode. First I'll calibrate the remote controller. Start calibration. Out, in, oop, out, in, up, down, and then this little wheel is to control the gimbal. So it's calibrated. Go to gimbal calibration, start calibration, and then it calibrates the gimbal. I don't know if that shows up. The gimbal's moving all over the place. Changes, you can see it on the video. And I'm calibrated to take off. It's acquired 7 satellites at the moment. There are 26 satellites up in the sky, which it has to acquire before you can take off. So it's connected. It's got enough satellites. This is white. I can go to press this little arrow button, swipe right to take off, and it would start the motors if I slid this to the right. But I'll wait till I get outside. Don't want to do it inside.